on, 6 players or so to watch either for good reasons or bad reasons, whether you're excited about seeing them or they have a lot to prove or they're a bubble guy or their reputation's in the shitter right now, whatever the case may be. We're going to highlight 6 players. So I'm going to kick it to you, Will. First, kick us off. Who do you got?
I'll go. The first one's a guy coming back from injury. Um, I'm excited to see what AVT looks like. I'm excited to see if he's able to stay healthy throughout camp, how his body's going to respond. Again, coming off the torn triceps a year ago, it's a lot of trust in the muscle. It's regaining strength and mobility, similar to the Achilles. But the difference is like there's a lot. I don't know. Triceps just doesn't scare you quite as much as the torn Achilles, especially for a guy that's an elite athlete at the position, etc. I'm just excited to see what AVT looks like. Can we get him? Can the Jets work his way back? Again, I'm sure he will not be full go. In terms of team every max reps day one. I guess he could be if the Jets want to do that, but I would work him back, slowly because when he's not in there, the Jets have struggled, obviously. So I just like to see him and what it looks like next to Joe Tippmann for an elongated training camp where Tippmann's not fighting third team reps because the Jets don't like to play rookies early on. I just want to see what he looks like, how the body recovers. How does he recover day to day during camp, working his way back from an injury? Unfortunately, he run into the problem that a lot of guys do coming back from injury. Hey, the Achilles is good. You pull the other hamstring because you work so hard on recovering this hamstring. Somebody that it literally happened to me, and again, I was no athlete the way AVT is. Came back from the broken leg on the left side, and I had the hamstring, and then I pulled my right hamstring because that's what happens. So I'm more just curious to see what he looks like. Does he look like the force he had potentially, started to become, especially at the beginning of last year? Pre-Denver game and the year before. So AVT is the first one I'll go with. How about you?
Yeah, so AVT is a great call. I think it's a critical year for AVT. I'm not breaking any news here, obviously, but like there's a camp building that says AVT is an injury-prone guy now, and it's 2 freak injuries. I don't necessarily agree with that, but right, wrong, or indifferent, that noise is happening, and so it's either AVT is an All-Pro or AVT is an injury-prone guy, and this is going to be a big year to tip it in either direction. I'm going to go with Chuck Clark first. Chuck Clark, I don't want to compare it to the Aaron Rodgers injury, but it's similar in the sense that it was a very big acquisition for the unit that he was becoming a part of, and we really never got to see it, right? And so I'm curious to see how Chuck Clark comes back, how he fits in, what it does to kind of the other players in that position group at safety. I think coming from the Ravens defense, you'll always, like we've historically done very well with picking players off from a Ravens defense where they wanted to get a little younger and bring a different guy in. And so I'm just curious to see how he fits into that unit and if he can take that unit that we've all kind of been looking at squinty-eyed for a couple years since, we moved on from May and Adams, and trying to get the unit right since then. And, Tony Adams and the Jordan Whitehead experiment didn't really work, even though there were some really good moments there. And so I think Chuck Clark is a guy who was a little underrated in Baltimore, and then we just never got the chance to see it last year. Early injury in camp. He's had a full year to recover. He should be ready to go. And so I'm curious to see what he brings to that defensive unit and if he can strengthen that back line.
Next guy I'm going to go with was a camp star, an OTA star. He's a rookie. I'm going to go with Braylon Allen. I'm going to go with Braylon Allen for this reason. I am very cautious to praise and hype up running backs as much as I liked Braylon Allen in college. And I thought, again, a guy that didn't have as good of a 2023, had a really good 2022, younger guy, freak athlete, the whole thing. Could he be Brees's, some level of a Batman and Robin? Obviously not, thunder and lightning, whatever stupid phrase we want to go, Sean Green light, whatever we want to do. I want to see this dude with pads on against NFL dudes. Again, I'm not just diminishing what we saw during OTAs. I'm not diminishing what he was in college. I will tell you that running in a hole against CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams or Quinnen Williams and stuff when you don't have pads on is very different than when you do have pads on. And when you're a rookie and all of a sudden the game starts to move even faster. And I'm just intrigued to see, does he look just as dominant in joint practices? Does he look just as dominant in preseason games when pads are on? Everyone else is bringing their A game in camp. People are bringing their A++ game to try to make a roster. And you're a guy that's probably going to be the number 2 running back. Your roster spot's pretty much solidified, and you had a really nice camp. And there's a lot of excitement. Is the juice just as crazy, or is it like, do you like play like Tarzan? Do you look like Tarzan, play like Gene? Like, I don't think he does at all. But there was that criticism a little bit in college of, hey, I'd like to see him run a little bit more physical than he does at times. I like to see in the NFL offense. Again, I'm excited for Braylon Allen. I think he's going to be a really solid piece of this Jets team, especially giving Brees Hall some, breaks when needed, letting Brees Hall kind of do some two-back sets, etc. I just want to see him during camp. Pads are on, pads are popping early in those first couple of days, especially when you're starting to hit. And like, is he trying to run over some of these guys, or is it like, hey, looking, I don't know. I just worry sometimes with that stuff, especially with running backs, where running backs and edge rushers and stuff, where it's like, or like even like Olu, right? Like he's not on our list, but it's like I don't know. It's Olu looked really good in like pass pro with like no pads on. Like I don't.
Yeah.
What does that mean to me? Like I want to see him with pads on.
Well, there's probably a lot rattling around in Braylon Allen's head as well, because the knock on him coming out was that he kind of relied on physicality too much and like wasn't able to really create in open field. And he would, he's bigger than everybody in college, and you're not going to be bigger than everybody in the NFL. And like you said, when Quincy Williams and C.J. Mosley put pads on and they're standing in the middle, that's a totally different conversation. And so
we saw the last time C.J. Mosley hit a Wisconsin running back in Denver, he like decapitated Melvin Gordon. So we've seen it happen before.
Right. And so, is he going to be able to kind of like, is he going to play his game, or is he going to try to change and adapt to the NFL? And like, what does that look like? And can he still play his game, or can he not? So you're right. A lot of questions there. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. My second one is really, it's boring, and I don't want to, it's actually worse than boring. It's like bad to talk about, and I don't want to talk about it. So that's why I'm not putting him last. I'm putting him second so that we can end on a more positive note. But it's Allen Lazard, right? And I think for most fans, probably this is just like a foregone conclusion at this point. We had the Saleh press conference halfway through last year where he essentially said that it's a 2-year contract, even though it's a 4-year contract with a 2-year out, right? So it's like basically guaranteeing that the guy's gone by the end of the year. There's already been talk about could he be cut even before this season starts and just eat the money, especially with what we talked about at the top of this pod with potentially bringing in another star receiver, right? So like, it's not good for Allen Lazard. It's really not good. And so if he is going to be a part of this team moving forward in any meaningful way, he's going to have to show something to the coaching staff in camp. Not even like not even the fans or like the media or anything else. Like I think he needs to prove to his coworkers and his managers that he is invested in this team and he's going to do what it takes to be a part of it. And I think a win for Allen Lazard is becoming what he was in Green Bay. At some point in between him playing in Green Bay and him signing in the Jets during that free agency period, Allen Lazard became known as something that he never was. And he never was like a $10 million receiver guy. He was like an occasionally flashy wide receiver 3 in Green Bay that had a drop problem. And like there were times when Aaron Rodgers was furious with him on the field in the huddle because of those drops and because of some of the mental miscues that happened. And then at some point along the way, in between all that and him coming here, it was like he was one of the top wide receivers on the market, right? And that's never really what he was. So I think if Allen Lazard can find his way back to being what he was, which is a good blocker and a guy who's not really going to cause any problems and a guy who's going to try to limit the drops and occasionally make a good flashy play because he can out physical somebody, that's enough, right? We don't need him to be the wide receiver 1 here. We don't need him to be the wide receiver 2 here. We probably don't need him to be the 3 here, right? If you can be a 4 or 5 and just not make a crucial drop, contribute on a block when you can, and more than anything, I think show your teammates and your coaches that you want to be here and you're going to take that role. That's probably enough. And so that's what I'd like to see from Allen Lazard.
Yeah, my last one, friend of the pod, Joe's favorite, my actual Hive guy. I'm going to go with Ashton Davis. You mentioned Chuck Clark from a safety perspective. I think safety is one of the few battles where we're not sure who the 2 starters are solidified to be. I think we saw some nice things from Tony Adams. We saw other things, where he struggled, obviously, in his first year as a starter. I think we saw a lot of really nice improvements from Ashton Davis. Is he a sub-package guy? Is he a starter? Is he a special team sub-package? Like, what is he? It's only the second guy that Joe Douglas has drafted that's gotten a second contract here. Outside of, or no, is he the first? Am I wrong? Because Quinnen's the only guy from that.
Yeah, Quinnen was McCagnon.
So it
might be,
guy?
yeah.
I think Ashton might be the first guy. I could be totally right. I think he is the first guy. I'm not. He's either the first or second guy. It doesn't matter. Regardless, he had a really nice year last year in terms of having an eye for the football, made some splash plays. He's obviously an elite special teams guy. Can he make that jump to full-time starter? Can it be him and Chuck Clark? Can it be Chuck Clark and Tony Adams? Can it be Ashton Davis? You know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm just excited to see him in terms of, like, comfortable in the system, he's built each year. I feel like he's gotten significantly better. Now is it the leap where, which is totally fine if he's a sub package special teams rock guy like the Jets have had guys when they've made really good runs where like they have two or three of these guys on the roster that are like, hey, they're here for 7 years and like they're fan favorites in the aspect of like they're here long enough where you build a connection to them and whatever it is, and like the Jets win when he's here. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Like it's a homegrown guy we drafted. Like you're happy for him. Or is he the guy that like, hey, wow, like tons of potential, like figured it out. The Jets brought him back. What a shrewd move. Ashton Davis is a quality starting safety at $1.5 million this year. Like that'd be an amazing win for the Jets. That like a homegrown guy that you could be paying minimal money. And then even next year, it's like you're re-signing him for $6 million a year. And it's like, you're still like, wow, this is a pretty nice duo, him and Tony Adams for $6 million. So I'm just saying, like, theoretically speaking. So he's just a guy to me, again. Are we going to see a ton during camp that's going to change things? No, because Tony Adams had an amazing training camp last year, but he won the job. And like, that's where we saw the difference, right? So, no more Jordan Whitehead, Chuck Clark, Ashton Davis, and Tony Adams. Which two were the Jets have done a lot of 3 safety looks as well. Do they try to see if they do more of that? So like, he's just an interesting guy to me that I feel like we don't talk about that much, but again, a guy that if he's really good or even just league average level good at starting safety or as a safety, the Jets defense is amazing around everything but the safety spot. You're in a really good position if that happens.
Yeah, I'm a converted fan of Ashton Davis, and so I'm not going to really add my opinion here, but I will say it's pretty impressive to see the path that he's taken in the eyes of fans. Where like on the day of the draft, I think they took him in the 3rd round, right? Like everybody was like, "Why did you just take a safety? We have so many more needs. We have 2 safeties on the roster. Like, what was that? What the hell are you doing?" And then everybody saw the Cal tape, and they were like, "All right, like maybe there's something here." And then pretty much for 2 or 3 years, everybody was like, Ashton Davis sucks. Like the guy can't tackle. He looks lost in coverage. He's constantly like whipping his head around and looking at the ball going in the other direction. And then all of a sudden last year, he kind of exhibits some ball hawk stuff. And by the end of the season, people are like, Ashton Davis is a free agent. He needs to come back. Right. And when he resigned for the money that he resigned for, everybody was happy about it pretty much universally. And he worked himself into this position of like, he needs to be back on this team. When just the previous season, it was like everybody couldn't wait to be done with Ashton Davis. So I think it's a really impressive road that he's taken. And I agree with you. I'm excited as well. My last one, I'm not going to go with a specific player. I'm going to go with a group, and I'm going to put it under the umbrella of defensive line depth, right? So I'm not talking about Jermaine Johnson. I'm not talking about Quinnen Williams. I'm not talking about Hassan Reddick. I'm talking about everybody else, right? So Javon Kinlaw is a highly drafted guy in San Francisco. We've seen that happen before with Solomon Thomas. Sol Thomas has worked himself into almost like this is not a good comparison, but do you remember when the Red Sox gave Tim Wakefield just like a lifetime contract? They were like, hey, dude, as long as you want to play, you can play here. It's almost like that with Solomon Thomas. Like, it seems like we just re-sign him every year for pretty much the same money for 1 year. And he comes and he fills a little bit of a role here. He's an okay pass rusher. He's not a great run defender, but he's just like there. He's good for defensive line rotation depth. So we're trying that again with Javon Kinlaw, and I think they're hoping to get more out of Javon Kinlaw than what they've gotten out of Solomon Thomas, which is like, let's try to unlock some of the potential we saw when he was drafted so highly. Behind him, you have Leki Fotu from Arizona, who is like a big run stuffer. We don't really know what we're going to get out of him other than that. And then you have like this other group that's been on the team a couple of years of Clemens and now Will McDonald coming into his 2nd year. And like Clemens, I think, has taken a massive, at least a PR hit. I think people who kind of know this defense really well will tell you that he's not a good player and he's not playing well and he's a potential bubble guy. And then you have Will McDonald, who, like, big year coming up for him. Can he contribute in some kind of meaningful way? And can he at least work his way onto the field for a bunch of time? And then Tanzel Smart, I'll also put in that group of guys that have just been like around the team as depth for a couple of years. Like, is Tanzel Smart going to get cut and re-signed 1,000 times this year like he always does, or is he going to work himself into more of a meaningful rotation? And then you have this group at the bottom of Eric Watts, Leonard Taylor, and Braden McGregor, of guys that were undrafted rookies that people are excited about. And so like that has now become a crowded room. DL depth is a thing that Rob Saleh does. And so At some point, there's going to be a group of 7 to 9 guys that are going to be constantly in and out. But who's in that group? Who's a meaningful contributor? And all of that should start to work itself out throughout the process of training camp. Top 3 guys we're not worried about. Hopefully, they barely even play. It's those next 6 that we really want to see, and we're going to see who emerges and who kind of pushes themselves to the front of the line there.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page. I don't have much to add there. I think you laid it out well. I just think which one of I think 2 of the UDFAs won't make it. They'll make practice squad or get picked up elsewhere. Which one of the 3 makes it? Again, could be multiples, but chances are it's probably one of the 3 guys. Is it Watts, Taylor, McGregor? McGregor, does he fit that JFM mold? Is Taylor a guy that can play next to Quinnen? Is Watts kind of that hybrid guy that again in more of a JFM type role? So I'm on the same page as you. I just, again, the whole D line and offensive line, there's a lot of new additions on both sides of the football. You want to see them get as many reps as possible, at least early on in camp, just build some chemistry. And then obviously with the young guys kind of, when camp gets a little dry and tired, you let those guys kind of, start ripping it before, any injuries. So, this was a lot of fun. I was excited to make my my other guys debut. I'm not as handsome as Jake, nor as good at graphics, but, did my best here.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Thanks for coming on, especially on short notice. I appreciate it. Guys, we have a combo deal on the website right now where if you buy a golf shirt, you can get the Badlands rope hat half off. We're trying to kind of eliminate everything we have on the website before we reload with a bunch of stuff for the start of the season for, some potentially colder weather, fall stuff. This week is going to be packed again as usual. We have the other guys today, and then we'll have the pod and War Room tomorrow and Wednesday, and then we'll have probably Dan will go on Friday, and Thursday we have something, and then Will go with TOJ Talks on Saturday. Do you have a guest lined up for Saturday yet, Will?
I'm not gonna. There might be a multiple guest.
Ooh, good teaser.
They might be people that we could have talked about in this episode. You never know.
Love that. Do you have any final thoughts before we go today?
No. Enjoy the last 10 days before the craziness, and we get back to training camp stats and criticizing Aaron Rodgers for going 9 of 11 for 4 touchdowns in a training camp practice because he was winning completion, and how many times he tapes his toe and the whole 9 yards. But I'm excited, man. I'm back ready to rumble here.
We're so close, dude. We're so close. It's MLB All-Star break. Soccer's over. We're ready for football. Here it comes. So thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.